In January of 2022, I made the big leap and moved from London, England to Saskatchewan in Canada. In this video, I'm going to give you my reasons in terms of whether I would prefer to live in Canada or the UK after living in Canada for almost 9 months now. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the video. Okay, so first thing I just want to say is take everything what I say with a pinch of salt, because it's just my opinion and it's going to be different depending on where you are living within Canada and both the UK. In this specific video, I'm going to focus on 4 things: quality of life, standard of living, education and employment opportunities, and finally the cost of living. So first of all, it's worth mentioning that my quality of life in both England and in Canada was pretty good. In both countries, I had full-time jobs and I also had family and friends to support me, which really does make a big difference, especially if you're moving to a new country. And I would also quickly mention that Canada is actually ranked #1 in the world in terms of quality of life, which is pretty amazing. The UK is somewhere up there, but compared to Canada, it is no way up there. And I guess going back to my life in the UK, when I lived in London, I paid £1,200 a month, so around 1,800 Canadian dollars, depending on the exchange rate, which when you think about it, is so expensive. However, when I really think about it, it's probably comparable to somewhere like Toronto or Vancouver. So while I'm complaining about how expensive it was, it is also expensive in some parts of Canada. With that said though, my cost of living and at least my quality of life in Saskatchewan has got a lot better, and I'm paying way less. In fact, I bought a house in Saskatchewan and my mortgage is costing me less than what my rent did in London, which is pretty crazy when you really think about it. Now, I will say though, where I am living now is naturally a lot cheaper than if you're living in somewhere like Toronto or Calgary or Edmonton, those bigger cities within Canada. So in a way, it's a little bit of an unfair comparison. However, if you do move to Canada, then it's always worth looking at those different options. You've got those big cities, but you've also got those smaller hubs as well, which is always worth looking at depending on what means more for you. One thing I really love for me personally is being able to travel around and see all the different lakes in Saskatchewan. And that's something that when I lived in London, I didn't think was possible. And to be honest, I didn't think I would enjoy nature as much as I do. So getting out of that concrete jungle, and I'm saying that, I still love London, but for me it's probably been a blessing because it has made me really focus on other things in life, and as a result, my quality of life has got better. So that leads me on to number 2, which is standard of living. Now, I will say my standard of living was pretty decent in both London and now in Saskatchewan in Canada. Now, my salary in London was actually pretty decent. However, when you really think about it, the cost of living is so high. So why in theory you feel like you get more money, actually a lot of that money is going on rent and your living expenses, which end up costing you so much more. Now, since I moved to Canada, my salary has actually been fairly similar, and again, I'm in the same field as what I was when I was living in the UK. However, in this case, my rent is much lower, and although I'm on the same wage, I feel like I can get by a lot easier and I have a lot more disposable income. And the reason for this is just because the cost of things is that little bit lower, which means that my standard of living has gone up a little bit. Now, again, I will just mention, if you are in a bigger city, then that might not be the case. However, of course, you're paying for other things like being in a big hub, which is also pretty cool and pretty amazing as well. And in my case, I'm in a pretty small city, so while there is a hub, it's much smaller in comparison to those bigger cities in Canada. Now, if you have moved to Canada and you have moved to a bigger city, I would love to know your thoughts in the comments down below, because again, your experiences are probably going to be different to mine, and I would really love to hear from you. Now, that leads me on to number 3, which is education and employment. To be honest, education in both Canada and the UK are pretty decent. At a university level, the UK has some of the highest ranked universities in the world, and so does Canada. With that said, at a school level, I would probably say that students in the UK are under a little bit more pressure, or at least in England, compared to students in Canada. And the reason why is because I feel like in the UK, or at least in England, we have a very big exam-focused curriculum, where in Canada, I feel like the curriculum is a little bit more broad, which is actually really nice for students, because again, it means that you can learn in many different ways, and it means in terms of assessment and all that kind of stuff, you may have more options, which is pretty awesome. To be honest, in terms of education, I probably prefer the Canadian system, but again, I'm a little bit biased as somebody who does work in education, but that isn't to say that both countries don't have a decent education system. But with that said though, finding jobs in Canada can be a lot more challenging compared to finding jobs in England, at least in my experience. That can be for a couple of reasons. Canada also has a lower population compared to the UK, but Canada also has a very highly educated population, which means that a lot of those jobs are very competitive, and lots of Canadians have those skills for those jobs, which means that applying can be a little bit more tricky, because again, more people and more qualified people are often applying for those jobs. At least in my experience as a teacher, getting a full-time job in England seems much easier than what it does in Canada. I do have a few friends who have been on the sub list now for at least 5 years, and they still can't get a full-time contract in Canada, whereas in the UK, I don't know many people who haven't got a full-time position unless it's by their own choice, where they would rather sub or they would rather work for an agency or something like that. But those full-time jobs in England, at least in teaching, are very much available. So I guess in a way, I have to kind of give it to the UK for this one, just because there are more job opportunities. However, that doesn't mean there aren't job opportunities in Canada as well. You just might need to look a little bit harder for them. So that leads me to number 4, which is the cost of living. Now, I would say in both countries, the cost of living is going up. And I know in the UK, there is actually a cost of living crisis going on at the moment, which just sucks. And thinking about that, I would actually say in my experience, my cost of living was much higher in the UK. Honestly, it really depends. For example, in the UK, I drove to work because actually getting a train was way more expensive than what it was to drive, which in most cases I know that isn't the case. However, at least where I lived, I had to drive into London every day from where I lived, and it was so expensive to get a train that driving was just that little bit cheaper. In Canada though, you don't even have the option for public transit in Saskatchewan anyway, especially if you're not in those bigger cities. Now again, if you're in a bigger city like Toronto, Calgary, Montreal, Vancouver, then again, you're not going to have those issues because the public transit there is pretty decent. However, if you're like me in Saskatchewan, well, it's not going to be that great, I'm afraid. The one thing with Canada that doesn't make sense is the cost of things such as groceries, phone bills, internet, and all that stuff is just so expensive. My internet bill is around $150 a month, which is just insane. I think I paid around £30 in the UK, so around $50 depending on the exchange rate, and I just can't believe the prices here. One thing people do though on the other end of things is lots of Canadians, or at least in Saskatchewan, grow their own produce, especially in the summer, because the cost of vegetables and fruit can be so expensive. So in another way, I feel like people in Saskatchewan at least are that little bit more sustainable, especially in the summer, because in the UK, or at least in my experience, I don't know anyone who grows their own stuff. If you are living outside Saskatchewan, what do you think of that? Do you also grow your own vegetables in the summer? Let me know in the comments down below. So in my opinion, what is the best country to live in? As much as I love the UK and I loved living in the UK, Canada just has to win for me. This is because I feel like overall my quality of life, my standard of living is a lot better. And I feel like I've had lots of opportunities here, even for employment and work and so many other ways, like being able to own a house, which in the UK honestly just felt impossible. With that said though, I do miss living in the UK, and England especially is always going to be home to me, and I'm kind of in this strange position now where I feel like I've got two homes, because the UK is also my home, but Canada is also feeling much like home as well. And I guess I'm coming to the realization that it's okay to have more than one home. So there we have it. There was my reasons in whether I would prefer to live in the UK or Canada. So if you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate it if you give the video a thumbs up. It really is appreciated. And if you're new to the channel, I would love it if you say hey in the comments. And if you want to see more videos about Canada and Saskatchewan, then feel free to hit that subscribe button. My name is Jack. Thanks so much for watching. It really is appreciated, and I'm looking forward to seeing all of you soon. Thanks. Bye for now.